this Inspector General's report, it disappointed a lot of people, made other people happy. What's the truth?
Well, the truth is it reveals a lot of very painful facts about abhorrent practices in the Department of Justice and especially in the FBI with respect to their failures to disclose information that is favorable to any defendant in the course of these investigations and their FISA abuses, the way they lied to the FISA court. I mean, the report documents abject lies to the FISA court, the falsification of a important document by an FBI attorney who was also assigned to the Mueller team. I mean, just remarkable and painful malfeasance and misfeasance by multiple agents and lawyers in the FBI and things that were not reported to the Department of Justice or to the FISA court. It certainly should have been.
Now, I don't see anybody really angry in Washington. Were they expecting it, or the people don't get angry in Washington? Tell me, what's your feelings?
Oh, I think there are plenty of people that are very angry about it. They have respect for Inspector General Horowitz, and I think that's why the hearing was civil, as it should have been. But yes, I think there are a lot of people that are very angry about what has gone on here, and it still remains to be seen what U.S. Attorney John Durham is finding in his criminal investigation. One of the important things to remember is that the Inspector General is really an internal auditor for the Department of Justice. He looks at and essentially has a checklist of what department policies are and whether the conduct he reviews met the standards of those policies. And in any number of instances here, he found that there were no policies and there should be. Frankly, one of the reasons there were no policies is because nobody should have ever done this. I mean, you shouldn't have to tell the FBI not to try to run confidential human sources against presidential candidates of the opposition political party. That just ought to kind of, be common sense, and that you would consult with the Department of Justice before considering anything like that. But of course, most of us who have studied this for a while realize that that's exactly what they wanted to do. It was a result-driven operation, and that's why it was conducted the way it was. It remains to be seen what other evidence exists that supports that. But it sounds like from what Attorney General Barr said and Mr. Durham said that they've already found a lot. And another thing about the Inspector General's report is he can't look at other agencies, except to the extent those other agencies provided information to the Department of Justice, like apparently the CIA did with respect to Carter Page. He can't subpoena documents from other agencies or interview people at other agencies. Another notable and important fact is that Mr. Comey refused to have his security clearance reinstigated so that he could be confronted with certain documents. So he was able to shield himself from even having his recollection refreshed on certain issues by saying he didn't have a clearance. They offered him to provide him one for just a day even to do that, and he declined.
Unbelievable. But there's been a lot of unbelievable things happening in Washington. Now, the guy that's very, very quiet is the FBI Director, Wray.
Yes, his response was very disappointing. I mean, somebody needs to go into the FBI and turn it upside down and shake it out.
Well, I think you're right, because I believe that 99.9% of the FBI is good, hard-working agents and great Americans, and we just happen to have a few, I guess, rotten apples?
I think the problem may be more widespread than that from what I'm seeing in this report. I mean, Comey and McCabe and Mueller had long-standing influence in the FBI, and they all chose people of the same ilk. So the entire culture needs to be reset.
What year did you see changes happen? Did it happen under President Obama? Did it happen under President Bush?
I think it's been going on for a long time, a very long time, and it's only gotten worse because no one has ever been held accountable. It's simply not going to improve until people realize their consequences for their outrageous actions. The same is true for prosecutorial misconduct in the Department of Justice. There's simply no consequences for any of these people, even when they intentionally hide evidence, which should be obstruction of justice, when they intentionally falsify documents, which is definitely obstruction of justice. Nothing's happened to any of them. They can lie to the Inspector General, which is a federal crime, and not be prosecuted. That's happened with any number of people within the Department of Justice or the FBI. That's unacceptable. If they're going to hold private citizens to those standards, they need to be held to those standards themselves. At a minimum, they ought to be held to higher standards when they're imbued with the trust of the public and the power and might of the federal government of the United States.
As a former prosecutor, knowing what our Connecticut Attorney General has said, John Durham, any gut feeling what do you think he has?
I think there will be some indictments within the next few months. I think there have to be, not the least of which will be Mr. Kevin Kleinsmith, the former FBI lawyer who altered a document and completely falsified it with respect to Carter Page.
Now, is he the U.S. Attorney Durham? Does he work closely with the Attorney General Barr? Is that the way it works in the federal government?
Normally, they would not be all that close, although they're certainly, in conversation. But I would guess, given the importance of this investigation and the fact we know they've made several overseas trips together, that they are communicating quite regularly.
But if he wanted to indict X, Y, and Z, does he have to get permission from Barr?
I wouldn't think so necessarily, but I would guess, given the level of importance of this case, he would certainly keep him informed of those developments.
Is there anything else you want to tell the American people this morning?
Well, General Flynn certainly appreciates everyone's prayers, cards, and notes, and their contributions to the MikeFlynnDefenseFund.org. It's been keeping us going. We're making a lot of progress. And there are dramatic revelations in the Inspector General's report that will be briefed by me sometime in the near future.
And let's remind people about your book.
It's Licensed to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. It's available at SidneyPowell.com, SidneyPowell, and there are autographed copies available there as well. It's a true story that explains how the Department of Justice has gone so wrong in the last 2 decades. And I've got a new book coming out with Harvey Silverglate called Conviction Machine, in which we propose solutions for some of the most egregious problems in our justice system.
Well, Sidney Powell, thank you so much for coming on the show, and we hope you have a happy holiday, and that something will happen that will make you happy. And
thank you, John. Yes, I can't wait to see the Flynn case dismissed. That's clearly what needs to happen with it.
And let's catch up again real soon.